SEP Fanfic Readings presents Aurelian by BittyBlueEyes. Author notes for this chapter. Just a reminder, Fred did not die in the final battle in Deathly Hallows. He's still kicking around the joke shop with George. This chapter picks up immediately where the last chapter left off. Chapter 2. Mummy? Sorry? Hermione asked in confusion. Merlin, I did not see that one coming, a dumbstruck Ron remarked. Mummy, please, Aurelian pleaded. Hermione took pity on the boy, though irritated with her friend's lack of helpfulness, and picked the child up. Merlin, she gasped. He's covered in blood. What happened? Are you okay? She took her hand off his cloak and stared at the blood-covered hand. Okay, Mummy. You okay? You okay, Mummy? The boy asked with a pathetic pout. Yes, Hermione couldn't finish her thought. She was puzzled and grew increasingly worried by the situation. The boy seemed unconcerned by her stuttering and instead appeared to take comfort in her presence. He laid his head on her shoulder and nuzzled against her neck. Hello? Some help? She demanded irritably to the 4 adults before her. Ori, dear, I think the grown-ups need to talk. Why don't you come with me to the kitchen and I'll get you a snack? Would you like that? Molly offered pleasantly. Mummy? Aurelian asked as he looked to Hermione for permission. Hermione looked at Molly with a desperate, quizzical expression. I'm sure she doesn't mind, do you? Molly prompted. No, of course, Hermione agreed slowly in her state of bewilderment. Molly held out her hand as Hermione gently lowered the boy to the floor. Mummy staying? Aurelian asked as he stared expectantly at Hermione. Yes, she's not going anywhere, Molly assured him. Now let's get to the kitchen. I just made some biscuits today. Would you like some? The conversation became nothing more than mumbling as they left the room. What is going on? Hermione asked uncomfortably. I don't know where to start, Harry admitted. How about with telling me who that child is? Hermione suggested petulantly. Well, see, I guess that's the tricky part, Ron answered. Try, Ronald, she insisted as she placed her hand on her hip. Well, we think he's yours. Ron swallowed hard and waited for another flare of her temper. What? That's ridiculous, Hermione scoffed, certain that her friend had truly lost his mind. Nice, Ron, Ginny said sardonically. His name is Aurelian. See, we're not exactly where he comes from. He just kind of showed up. He's wearing a time turner. What? Where on earth would he get a time turner? Hermione gasped. He said that his mother gave it to him, Ginny answered. From what we could get out of him, it looks like Death Eaters were chasing them. They ran in here, and his mother sent him back with a time turner, Harry continued. I thought that you said it couldn't be Death Eaters, Ginny reminded him, her eyebrow cocked and a slight bite in her tone. That was before I knew he came from the future, Harry said, unperturbed by Ginny's attitude. And, well, we think you might be his mom. What? No, Hermione said defiantly. You jumped to that conclusion just because he called me Mummy. Not many kids mistake a stranger for their parent, Hermione. I like that anyway. And really, it makes sense, doesn't it? If they were fleeing Death Eaters, how many people would come here? Ron tentatively offered. And, well, he does look a little like you. You're jumping to conclusions, Ronald, Hermione said tartly, unable to deny his logic. Is there anything else? Any other clues to where he comes from? Well, there's this, Harry said quietly, holding the forgotten wand in his hands for the others to see. He said that his mother told him not to let it go. Hermione gasped again. It's Bellatrix's wand. I know, Harry said quietly. But she's dead, Ginny said meekly. I know that, which raises the question of how he came to possess it. I don't think it's an accident that he came with this wand over any other. Especially if Hermione's his mother, I'm sure it would be a clue of some sort, Harry reasoned, trying his best to be quiet the panicking feelings that arose inside him. Hermione's right that we can't jump to conclusions, but I really don't think I like this. Where do we start? Ginny asked, sharing Harry's nervousness. The blood, Harry answered. That blood is his mother's. We try to identify it. Harry didn't mention Hermione again, and he looked at her meaningfully. Hermione was beginning to feel queasy. She desperately wanted to deny the possibility, but being a logical person, she understood that she could not. Okay. Harry summoned a tiny vial from a nearby cupboard and handed it to Hermione. Hermione took a breath and drew her wand over her finger to make a small cut. She filled the small vial and sealed the wound on her finger. It was her job to test little vials like these for the magical law enforcement nearly every day. She never imagined that she'd ever need to have her own blood tested. I'll just get his cloak, Harry offered. Then we'll leave. Ron nodded. Do you mind if I change first? Hermione asked. She gestured to the blood on her blue top from having picked up Aurelian. Um, I think it's best for you to stay with Aurelian, Hermione. Harry started nervously, but sounded rather firm by the time he had finished the sentence. No matter what the results are, he still believes that you're his mother. He's really shaken. He needs you right now. Hermione looked rather panicked, and Harry placed a hand on her shoulder. I know this must feel strange to you. It feels strange to us, too, but if we're going to figure this out, then we need to get all that we can from him. He's at ease around you. I think he'll open up to you, Harry said seriously. But Harry, I'm not really good with kids. I mean, I've never really spent time with young children, Hermione admitted. Her nervous habit manifested as she bit her lip anxiously. Mum will be here, Ron reminded her. Ginny, too. Just talk to him. Hermione nodded and walked into the kitchen with the others. Mummy, you're back! Aurelian shouted joyfully and stood on his chair at the table. I got biscuits! You want biscuits, Mummy? No, thank you, Hermione answered with a forced smile. Aurelian, I'm going to need to take your cloak. I tried to take it off, but he said his mom would, Molly answered apologetically. Yes, I'll get it. Hermione walked over to where he stood on the wooden chair, undid his blue striped scarf, and draped it over her arm. She then unbuttoned his cloak and removed it from his tiny shoulders as she tried the best to ignore his expression of pure adoration. Okay, now Harry's just going to borrow these for a little while, okay? The boy pouted slightly at the thought. But what if I want to go outside? Don't worry, love, it's a beautiful sunny day. You won't need that cloak for quite some time, Molly assured him. Hermione, despite her discomfort, couldn't take her eyes off the child. She handed the cloak and scarf to Harry without looking back at him. They were right. He did look a little like her. He had her button nose and long lashes. His hair was light brown with a slight golden tint to it. Though it was lighter, it was still somewhat akin to her own. It wasn't frizzy or thick, but it still had a hint of curl to it. Hermione heard Harry and Ron offer some kind of goodbye as they left, but she was still focused on the boy who had started to tell and show her something about the chocolate biscuit in his hand. Hermione swallowed hard as she stared at the dried blood on his face, and before she could stop herself, she tentatively reached out to cup his face. A silent sob escaped her when her fingers matched perfectly to the dried print on his cheek. She didn't need any more proof. She knew he was hers. Sorry, dear, Molly apologized and broke Hermione out of her thoughts. I thought of washing his face, but then I thought it'd be better to put him in the bath after this. A bath? Aurelian asked excited. I can have a bath? Of course, Ginny smiled. No scroungy little critters are allowed to run about this house. Aurelian giggled as Ginny tickled him. For some reason, it made Hermione feel even more uncomfortable. Ginny seemed so much more at ease around him than she felt. She had heard that Mrs. Weasley had taken to doing some babysitting once the twins had started school, so she assumed that Ginny had had a lot of exposure to the young children, but it didn't help her own feelings of inexperience. Yes, as soon as you're done with your snack, we'll run a bath, Hermione informed him. I'm done! Aurelian smiled brightly, discarding his half-eaten biscuit at the table in anticipation for a good splash in the tub. All right then, Hermione said uncomfortably. Don't worry, I'll give you a hand, Ginny offered reassuringly. Hermione nodded gratefully to her friend, thankful that Ginny had picked up on her unease. It simply won't do to change him back into those dirty clothes when you're through. I think I might have some of the boys' clothes that size still up in the attic, Molly said thoughtfully. I'll just have a look. The girls watched Molly disappear up the stairs and turned back to Aurelian. Ready! The boy cried excitedly. Hermione offered him her hand, and when he took it, he made an exaggerated jump off his chair and raced toward the stairs, pulling her behind him. Despite Aurelian's enthusiasm, it was a slow march up to the third floor where the bathroom was located. Hermione had just started to run the water when Aurelian began to impatiently tug his robes over his head. Hold on there, Hermione chuckled and pulled the robes back down a little. You have to let me unbutton them first. She had only undone 2 buttons before he tugged them over his head again. He got farther this time, but still needed help to extract his arms from the tangled material. Hermione and Ginny tried not to giggle. Seems you've got a Tornadoes fan on your hands, Ginny smiled as she gestured to the navy and sky blue underpants that had matched his scarf. He turned to smile at Ginny and Hermione and noticed the signature T.T. on the back. You like tornadoes? Aurelian asked excitedly. No, I happen to be a Harpies supporter myself, Ginny admitted. You like Quidditch, do you? Mm-hmm, he answered as he climbed into the tub. Daddy likes tornadoes, too. Ginny and Hermione were both shocked by this statement. Both, of course, had wondered briefly who his father might be, but so many things were happening that they hadn't dedicated much thought to it. Aurelian made no notice of the change in atmosphere as he continued. You have toys, Mummy? For the bath? What? No, sorry, Hermione answered. Aunt Ginny, you have toys? He asked. Both girls were surprised again. Aunt Ginny? Hermione asked, her eyes wide. You know me? Ginny pried. Aurelian nodded, confused by their stunned expressions. You have toys? He asked again. No, but I have bubbles. Would you like bubbles for your bath? Ginny offered. Yes, please. Definitely yours, Ginny chuckled. Never met a toddler that used manners without prompting. Aurelian, Hermione started hesitantly. Tell me about your dad. Daddy? Hermione nodded. What's his name? Aurelian laughed at the question. Daddy, he said as though it were obvious. Right, what does he look like? Hermione bit her lip, her stomach doing flips. The boy stopped his splashing and pursed his lips in thought. Big. Big, Hermione said flatly. That really didn't help. Really big, Aurelian continues as he stretched his arms up as high as he could. He picks me way up so I can touch the ceiling. Well, not at home. The ceiling is too high. Home? Hermione asked as she tried to visualize everything. Mm-hmm. It's way big, too. So tall as the burrow. My ceiling in my room is high, too. The stars blink down on me from my ceilings, Aurelian said proudly. Sounds fun. Is that your favorite part? Hermione asked with a soft smile. The past few minutes had allowed her to feel a little more comfortable with him. No, I likes my Quidditch rug best. It looks like real Quidditch ground. I wish it could have the seats, but you say I can't lay on it. I like it to play with my Quidditch people with Daddy. One time, my Crawford flew right into Daddy's eye. He said not to told you, he cried, Aurelian babbled on. Ginny snorted in amusement as she re-entered the room with a bottle of bubble syrup. Sounds like a typical male. Aurelian was quickly distracted by the bubbles, and Hermione almost forgot that she was actually supposed to clean him. That part felt most awkward of all. She thought that perhaps she should strike up more conversation to help. So, Daddy is big and likes Quidditch. She left the statement open and hoped he would continue. And he a good tickler, Aurelian smiled. His grin fell quickly, though. Mummy, when Daddy be back? I don't know, she replied uncertainly. She tried to think back to the scene when the others had told them about Aurelian's arrival. Was he there with them when he sent Aurelian back with the time turner? Is he still in the castle? Aurelian pouted. Castle? What castle? Hermione inquired. The castle in the clouds, he answered, his pout becoming more pronounced. At this, Hermione found it quite difficult to breathe. Aurelian, what happened to your daddy? Ginny asked apprehensively. He went away when the scary people came. Mummy said that the angels took him and Uncle Fred to the castle in the clouds, he explained. Hermione's insides swam. She didn't know who this man was, but still felt a great loss. And Fred, he had to mean, I think bath time is over, Ginny said quietly. Hermione nodded and silently took the proffered towel from Ginny. One glance at the other girl and she knew that she was having a difficult time breathing as well. Mum, she called in a voice that was a little higher than normal. Right here, Molly appeared and handed over a set of faded blue robes and a tiny pair of red underpants. And I found a few things you might want to see, Hermione. Hermione nodded. Don't worry, Ginny said. I'll dress him and put him down for a nap. No nap, Aurelian loudly protested. Yes, Aurelian, it's been a long day for you. You need a rest, Hermione stated firmly. Ginny dried him off in a plush towel and said, Don't worry, you won't miss anything. And when you wake, it'll be time for dinner, okay? Mummy staying? He checked. Yes, I'll be here, Hermione answered, still uncomfortable with being addressed as Mummy. She left the room and followed Mrs. Weasley down a couple flights of stairs, where she stopped on the first floor landing outside Ginny's room. I found some things as I was getting ready to launder his clothing. I thought you might want to have a look at them, Molly said softly as she held out her hand. Hermione opened her palm and accepted 4 items. The first, of course, was the time turner. Hermione pocketed it and looked at the other 3 items. Her stomach twisted in knots again. In her hand was a ring, a bottle, and a folded piece of paper. I didn't read it, Molly assured her. I was afraid it might be private. At this, Mrs. Weasley left Hermione alone. Hermione watched her go back upstairs, probably to help Ginny, before she entered Ginny's room for privacy. She looked around the room, uncertain of what she would actually do. Part of her chomped at the bit to examine the items closer, while the other part of her dreaded what the answers the items might hold. She sat down gingerly on the side of Ginny's bed and took a deep breath before she opened her hand again. The ring. She picked the ring up and examined it closely. She stared at it in awe. It was beautiful, an antique ring made of platinum in an intricate Edwardian filigree design. with a single brilliant cut cognac diamond in the setting. Upon further examination, she found the words, "Eternally yours," inscribed inside. This ring could be anything, she told herself, but no matter how she tried to convince herself of it, she was certain that it was her wedding ring. The onslaught of emotions made her feel ill, so she pocketed the ring quickly. She then examined the small vial, and something jumped inside her. This was what they needed. Memories. The swirling substance inside was a collection of memories. Whose, she wasn't sure, but she knew that this was a crucial piece of the puzzle. After she pocketed that too, she hesitantly opened the paper and immediately wished she hadn't. It was a news clipping. The headline stared up at her in bold newsprint. "Greatest tragedy in wizard history." She could barely bring herself to read it. Greatest tragedy in wizard history. The nation mourns today, and wizards around the world grieve with us as the gravity of yesterday's attack crushes us all. Yesterday, April 19th, 2006, at 1:15 a.m., the news reached our office that Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry was not only attacked, but completely destroyed, taking with it the lives of over 200 students and teachers, including the beloved headmistress, Minerva McGonagall. Officials say that it was a well-plotted massacre. Each of the house common rooms were targeted with cursed fire, leaving no escape for the sleeping students, and no chance to fight against it. We all pray for justice, an end to this unending war, but after such a devastating, heartrending blow, this reporter wonders if anyone will ever find the strength to wake to another day. "No," Hermione breathed. At a knock at the door, Hermione looked up to see Harry and Ron in the open doorway. "We just got back," Ron announced, appearing quite nervous. "Hermione?" Harry started with a condoling tone. "I know, Harry," Hermione said softly. "I know he's mine." Harry and Ron exchanged a quiet glance, unsure of how to approach their subdued friend. "He had some more things on him. You should probably have a look," Hermione told the two of them. The boys cautiously stepped forward. "It's worse than we imagined." She handed Harry the newspaper clipping and watched his hand become unsteady. Harry looked up at her, his eyes hard, as he stated with firm resolve, "This will never happen." Chapter 3. Investigation begins. "Good morning," Hermione greeted flatly as she ascended the stairs and stopped at the third-floor landing. "Morning," Harry returned while he leaned against the wall and rubbed his eyes. "How'd you sleep?" "You're joking, right?" Hermione replied despondently. "Yeah, it's been quite some time since either of us has had to sleep here, hasn't it?" he said as he smiled fondly up the crooked stairwell. "You know our inability to sleep has nothing to do with where we are," she sighed, leaning up against the wall next to him. "Yeah, maybe," Harry shrugged noncommittally, but knowing full well she was right. "But I'm sure that Ron's snoring still had something to do with it." A small smile tugged at the corner of Hermione's mouth. "Yeah, well, maybe in your case, then. Speaking of, where is Ron?" "That's who we're waiting on," Harry informed her, jerking his thumb toward the closed bathroom door. "He's taking quite a long time, even for a shower," Hermione commented. "You know how he is before coffee," Harry smiled. "So, where's Aurelian?" "He's downstairs. Molly's getting him cleaned up. He got rather sticky with the oranges he had at breakfast." Hermione fidgeted, still rather uncomfortable in her thoughts of the boy. "You two have already eaten, then?" "Yeah. He didn't sleep well either. He got frightened in the night, and I had to move up to the twins' old room and sleep in the other bed so he wouldn't be alone." She swallowed hard and anxiously examined her fingernails to avoid Harry's gaze. "So, what did Robard say about you taking on a secret investigation?" "Nothing, really," he answered with a shrug. "Of course. Who would question you?" Hermione rolled her eyes. "What did he say when you specifically asked for assistance?" "Again, nothing, Hermione. It's not that uncommon for us to work together." "While that's true, you usually only ask for testing or paperwork." "Yes, and while that's true, you're still the best they've got in the Evidence and Investigation Division, not to mention my best friend. I assure you that it doesn't look strange that I'm seeking you out." "How's Ron taking it?" Hermione inquired. "He's a bit sour that he can't work with us, but it can't be helped. While I can work with you, and he can work with you, Ron and I working together would stick out. His work is general crime, not chasing dark wizards. If Robards or anyone saw the three of us working on a secret case, there would be a panic," Harry reasoned. "I know. I just hate leaving him out, is all," Hermione explained. I know," she said once she glanced at Harry. "It's not like he's left out. We'll fill him in. I just know that I'd hate to be there, on the same floor, a few offices down, and unable to help." "Oh, he'll help, just not directly." Damn it, what's taking him so long? I need a shower too, and if he doesn't hurry, we're going to be late. Harry grumbled before pounding on the bathroom door impatiently. What are you waiting for anyway? You're already dressed, he said as he glanced at Hermione's cream-colored shirt and gray pencil skirt. It's the only bathroom here, Harry. I need to use the loo, Hermione chuckled. Oh, right. Merlin, this is why it's nice to live alone. I completely understand. The bathroom door finally opened, and Harry and Hermione straightened up. Merlin, you guys don't need to beat the door down, Ron grumbled with a sour look on his face. His expression didn't have the effect he was looking for, though, since he stood there in a towel with water dripping from his sopping ginger hair into his eyes. After you, Hermione, Harry offered. She nodded in appreciation. Watch your head, Hermione advised as she held Aurelian tighter in her arms and exited the ministry fireplace. She looked at him and down at herself and cast a quick cleaning spell over them, which removed the ash from Aurelian's freshly laundered pale green robes. Ready? Harry asked from behind her. Yeah, we're ready, she answered. She gently placed Aurelian on the floor and took his hand in hers. Look, guys, I'm really sorry, but I gotta leave you here, Ron said miserably. I'm already running late, and if I don't get to my office before Gertie does, she's gonna have my head. It's okay, Ron, Harry assured him. I'll catch up with you later. Ron nodded and took off running. Harry and Hermione walked through the atrium at Aurelian's hurried pace, which was still slower than they normally would. Are you sure people aren't going to ask too many questions about him? Hermione asked with a sideways glance at Harry. You're being paranoid, Hermione, Harry told her flatly. Of course people are going to be curious, but we'll answer the same thing each time. He's a witness in an investigation. Nothing more. Hermione nodded. She'd been paranoid all morning. It was true. She knew people would be only mildly curious, but it couldn't help but worry that people might somehow miraculously discover that he was hers. Morning, Bentley, Harry greeted casually. Morning, Mr. Potter, the security guard replied brightly as he folded his newspaper and placed it on top of the counter. How are you this morning? Doing fine, thanks. And what can I do for you this morning? He smiled and nodded to acknowledge Hermione's presence. We have a visitor with us today. Harry gestured toward Aurelian, and Bentley stood on his toes to lean over the counter to see the visitor Harry was referring to. Oh my, and what's this little guy doing here today? This is Aurelian. He's helping with a case we're working on, Harry replied, like it was no way unusual. Of course, I'll just get you a badge, Bentley said with a lopsided smile. A loud clink sounded from behind the desk, and the man handed Hermione a shiny gold badge that read Aurelian, Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Must be nice having a visitor that doesn't need to be physically restrained. Harry nodded, and Hermione dropped to her knees in front of Aurelian. Here you go. You get your own special badge for today, Hermione smiled as she pinned it on his chest. Now come on, we have to get to the lifts. Aurelian never let go of Hermione's hand as they waited in line for the lifts. As soon as one arrived, they scooted in toward the back. Hermione looked down as she felt the many eyes on her. She knew it was because people recognized her after the war, especially since she was with Harry, but she couldn't help but be uncomfortable. She knew people would wonder about the small boy whose hand she held. Aurelian pointed excitedly at the memos that hovered over their heads. Look! Airplanes! Yeah, I know, Hermione said with a smile. Is that one for you, Mummy? He asked as he pointed to a yellow one near the front. Why would you think that would be for me? She asked uneasily, hoping no one had heard him call her Mummy. You always get yellow ones, he answered simply. Harry and Hermione exchanged surprised glances. That's right. Yellow memos are for level 2. Have you been to the ministry before, Aurelian? Harry asked. I come lots of times with Mummy, he smiled broadly. Harry and Hermione were relieved when the lift finally stopped at level 2 and they could exit, but as soon as they stepped out, a cheerful voice stopped them. Mr. Potter, a man greeted with delight. I am so glad I caught you. Good morning. It's Gibbsley, right? Harry responded with a courteous handshake. That's right, Alan Gibbsley. You remembered. He grinned with pride and shook Harry's hand a little longer than was customary. Oh, and who is this with you today? Mr. Gibbsley smiled at Aurelian, completely ignoring Hermione's presence. This is Aurelian. He's a witness in an investigation, Harry stated. He tried to be polite despite his frustration with people he didn't really know approaching him regularly. Good, good. So I was talking to my wife last night about you. Hermione was distracted from the man's rambling by a cold, hard voice. Granger! Hermione looked up to her right and audibly groaned in frustration. Ugh, great. Harry nodded, looking sympathetic. Granger! The man barked again. Yes, Malfoy? Hermione asked. She left Aurelian at Harry's side and approached the irate blonde. Where the hell have you been? We had an appointment this morning. I've been waiting here for over half an hour. I know things are pretty lax in your department, but the International Magical Cooperation doesn't have patience for those that waste our valuable time. He angrily growled at her, his signature sneer in place. Hermione stared at him with her eyebrows raised and lips pursed in an expression of bored exasperation. I have our minister and the Italian minister breathing down my neck about the transfer report for that Italian convict, and I need— Daddy! A scream of delight sounded from behind Hermione. Harry and Hermione's mouths fell open as Aurelian flew forward and wrapped his arms tightly around Draco Malfoy's legs. Daddy! Daddy, you back! Uppy, uppy, Daddy! What the— Who the hell is this? Draco shouted in disgust. Daddy, it's Ori! Aurelian answered, beaming up at the blond man. Uppy, uppy! Get off of me, you stupid little brat, he ordered as he pushed the boy's arms off his leg. Aurelian, come here, Harry said in a level voice. His arms hung dead by his sides as he moved his fingers in request for Ori's hand. His hardened glare never veered from Malfoy's face. Aurelian slowly moved toward Harry and took the proffered hand. He's with you? If possible, Malfoy looked even more appalled, and he brushed the imaginary dirt from his robes. Harry simply nodded. Just keep it away from me. Hermione hadn't moved. She stood there in shock and horror. Her lips were parted, but she found herself unable to breathe. What are you doing still standing here, Granger? I need those papers, Malfoy barked. Godric, no, Hermione breathed. Praying to your house founder is not going to help me. Get your arse, Malfoy, Harry barked in return, earning him Draco's attention and a scathing look with it. Yes, Potter? He said impatiently. Harry's voice took on a solid, stoic state. The papers can wait. You're coming with us. The papers can wait? And who do you think you are that can— I said the papers can wait. We need to talk. Harry repeated in the same steady tone. You've just become a serious part of our investigation. Excuse me? He demanded in outrage. Aurelian pouted and partially hid himself behind Harry's legs. Harry didn't miss this and gave the tot's hand a gentle squeeze. You heard me. I don't have time for your games, and you can protest as much as you want, but you know better than anyone that if I summon you for questioning, the law says you must be there, Harry reminded him. This is ridiculous. Draco paused a second to try to regain his composure. Look, Potter, he started again. He spoke slowly through clenched teeth as he tried to stay calm. It is very serious, very important to our nation's relationship with Italy for me to finish my assignment. Just let Granger fetch me the paperwork she has, and I will be on my way. Sorry, Malfoy, but this isn't a game. You're coming with us. I'll send the papers you need and the correct papers from our department to explain to your superior that you are needed here, Harry said finally. Hermione, let's go. Godric, no, Hermione breathed again. Hermione, Harry admonished. Hermione nodded and seemed to come out of her stunned stupor. She still looked like she hadn't seen anything that had occurred around her, like she had completely disconnected from the world. This is just fucking great, Malfoy muttered furiously. Hermione came completely out of her daze to scold him over her shoulder. Watch your mouth! Malfoy sneered again, and Hermione looked ahead to follow the stiff form of Harry and the toddler with slumped shoulders that held onto his hand. Hermione felt sick to her stomach. In here, Malfoy, Harry instructed as he held the door open for the blond man. Draco stopped and looked into the plain white room with a table with 2 chairs on either side of it. An interrogation room? Really? He demanded with furious indignation. I told you we need to talk, Harry repeated. That's it. This is harassment. I want to see your superior, Draco ordered. That can be arranged if you want, but I told you I'm not playing games. Robards will just tell me to use my discretion. Calling him here will just mean that you have to be here that much longer, Harry stated blandly. Draco did not reply. Just have a seat and I'll be in as soon as I send all the papers to your department head. Fine, he muttered and turned into the room. Bloody prejudiced Aurors, he shouted as he slammed the door shut behind him. Harry and Hermione watched him plop moodily into one of the chairs through the narrow window in the door. Harry sighed and looked down at a very distraught-looking toddler. Here, Aurelian, you sit here while we pull some things together, okay? He asked as he led the little boy to an oak office chair behind a large desk. Aurelian climbed up into the chair, and Harry returned to Hermione's side where she stared at Draco through the window from afar. Hermione turned to face Harry and was caught off guard by his upset and annoyed expression. Don't look at me like that, Harry, she ordered. Malfoy, Hermione? Malfoy. Really? He insisted in a revolted disbelief. Stop it! I am just as shocked and horrified as you. More so, I'm sure, Hermione replied angrily. Just tell me. Have you been seeing him? Harry demanded. No, she shrieked with vehemence, terribly offended by the accusation. How can you even ask that? You know I don't like him. Didn't you just witness how we interact? Yeah, but Aurelian had to happen somehow. Harry! She cried indignantly. I'm just saying, Harry replied. He lost some of his anger as Hermione's fervent protest. Sorry, Please summon those papers he's nagging about while I fill this out. Hermione obeyed and summoned them from her office a few doors down. A short time later, an orange paper airplane darted off to the offices of International Magical Cooperation. Hermione and Harry looked at the door to the interrogation room, where Aurelian waved through the glass at Draco, who scowled back at the boy. I don't know about this, Harry, Hermione voiced apprehensively. I know. I don't like this either, but you know what's riding on this investigation. Hermione nodded, strode forward, and led herself and Aurelian into the room. Harry followed right behind. Oh, group effort, is it? Draco quipped. Going to sick the toddler on me again? Does he scare you? Hermione jeered. Draco's eyes narrowed. Enough. Aurelian is an important part of our investigation. That's why he's here, Harry explained as he took a very businesslike attitude. He helped Aurelian into the chair furthest from Draco. Harry sat beside the tot and left Hermione with no choice but to sit next to Draco. Draco leaned back in his chair and said seriously, If I'm being accused of anything, I want my lawyer. You're not being accused of anything. Yet, Harry stated, suddenly suspicious of why the man would desire a lawyer's presence. I haven't done anything, Potter, so just get on with whatever it is you want from me. We have reason to believe that there is some secret Death Eater activity going on, Harry said cautiously. What? Draco asked a bit uncomfortably. He recovered quickly and returned to his disgruntled manner. So, rumors of Death Eaters, and you immediately look at me. You of all people should know my stand on the matter, Potter. It was only with my testimony and assistance that you were able to lock away half the people you did. If I heard anything about Death Eater activity, don't you think I'd be running to you instead of the other way around? Would you ever run to anyone, especially Harry, if you needed help? Hermione asked skeptically. Draco scowled at her. No one asked you. Now, I haven't heard anything, not even rumors. Next question. You do have more questions, don't you? Plenty, Harry said flatly. The problem is that we don't know how to go about it. The truth is, this is quite a complicated case, and completely confidential. Whether you know it or not, you are very much at the center of it. So I'm going to give you two options. Because of where you stand in this case, I'm willing to extend an invitation to you to join the investigation and help us at peer level. Or you can remain in the position you are now, which means I cannot answer your questions, but you'll be coming to see us regularly until the case is solved. Those are my choices? I'm stuck in this either way? Draco glowered. I didn't say you'd like the options, Harry stated. Harry, Hermione gave Harry a questioning, pleading look. She wasn't sure that she liked the idea of Draco working with them on this. Malfoy frowned at her, uncertain what to make of her reluctance. What happens if I agree to help? Draco inquired, looking between them. I fill out more paperwork for your department that excuses you from the work to help here. You leave your position as long as this takes, and your position is saved for when you return. You continue to receive your salary while you're working with us. Harry defined the position quite professionally, taking Draco off guard. And if I refuse? Draco pried. We still write your department, explaining that you are needed to gather information. You return to work when we finish asking questions, and you come back here every time we summon you. I assure you, it will look much better to your superiors if you take option 1. Hermione explained with a grudging acceptance that it would be better for Draco was involved. Option 2 means I don't have to put up with you as much, though, Draco continued. Neither Hermione nor Harry responded, while Draco seemed to be having an internal battle. Fine, get talking. You're agreeing to become an official part of this investigation, then? Harry checked. Yes, Potter, he answered flatly, as he avoided Harry's eyes. You know that this means you can't speak of this with anyone, correct? Hermione pressed. I'll bind you to it if I must, Harry threatened. Sweet Salazar, Draco exclaimed, throwing his hands in the air. I get it, okay? I know what I agreed to. And just who do you think I'm going to be sharing this with anyway? This is not something I'm looking forward to. Hermione and Harry exchanged looks and nodded. That would do. All right. Where to start? Harry wondered aloud.